Hi, it's Katrina. Are you ready to embark on an underground adventure? Today we are going to explore some hidden worlds that time has forgotten. A tunnel has recently appeared that no one has entered for thousands of years. There is a cave said to hold the secrets of hidden texts and lost tribes. There's so much to cover, so let's jump right in. The cave under the Euphrates River. The Euphrates River is starting to run dry. For those familiar with biblical prophecy, this is pretty alarming. According to the Bible, there are demons imprisoned underneath the river, and when it dries up, the demons will be released and the apocalypse will soon follow. Whether you believe in prophecy or not, it doesn't change the hard facts. The ancient river running through old Mesopotamia is nearly out of water. As it runs dry, strange things are being found along its freshly revealed bottom. A recent video was uploaded online of a man who found a mysterious tunnel in the river, which had previously been hidden by the water. According to the video, the tunnel led deep underground to a mysterious staircase and then just ended. The staircase stopped abruptly, almost as if whatever is down there isn't allowed to be seen by humans just yet. There's a lot of speculation that this staircase is leading to the prison where the angels are locked up. Wait, is it demons or angels who are imprisoned underneath the river? It's a bit of both. According to the book of Revelation, 4 of the worst fallen angels were bound in chains underneath the Euphrates. They started as angels, but ended as chained demons. Revelation 9:13 is a passage from the New Testament of the Bible that describes the release of 4 imprisoned angels. The voice from the altar commands the 6th angel to release these 4 bound angels. This suggests that their release is part of God's plan or judgment. Revelation goes on to say, so the 4 angels who had been prepared for the hour, the day, the month, and the year were released to kill a third of mankind. This is a little disturbing. As if that isn't frightening enough, there are terrifying horses with riders wearing breastplates the color of fire, and sapphire, and sulfur, and the heads of the horses were like lions' heads, and fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths, representing the plagues they would bring. The horses are symbolic representations of war, famine, pestilence, and death. This, of course, is interpreted as a future catastrophic event to judgment. It's a warning of the consequences of sin. Revelation 16:12-16 links this event to the drying up of the Euphrates and the rise of evil forces. If you put stock into prophecy, Armageddon might be right around the corner. When drought arrives to the Euphrates River, it is never a good sign. Then again, maybe the mysterious tunnel is an ancient ruin that's been buried for thousands of years. It might not have anything to do with the end of days. In 2180 BC, a tunnel was supposedly dug underneath the Euphrates River to connect the 2 halves of the city of Babylon. It's considered a legendary construction because no one has ever found proof it existed. The only proof of this great tunnel comes from old books. Super old books. One description of the tunnel is in the life of Apollonius of Tyana, written by Philostratus in 250 BC. The book specifically mentions an extraordinary bridge running underneath the river instead of above it. The bridge, aka the tunnel, was used to connect the palaces on either side of the bank. It was supposedly built by a queen, though Philostratus didn't know which one. In the book Bibliotheca Historica, written in 50 BC by Greek historian Diodorus, he claimed the tunnel was commissioned by Queen Semiramis. Diodorus gave a detailed description of what the tunnel looked like. Since nothing like this had been seen in the ancient world before, the Greek historian didn't quite know how to phrase it. He described the tunnel as an underground vault with thick walls. He said there was a gate on either side of the river so that Semiramis could walk out of one palace, descend into the gaping vault, stroll below the raging river, and come back up into her other palace. How many palaces did this woman need? What are your thoughts on the mystery unfolding right now in Mesopotamia? Are fallen angels about to be released? Or is this tunnel part of Semiramis's ancient architectural marvel? Or nothing at all? Let me know in the comments. The City of Nights buried underground. The Mediterranean island of Malta, renowned for its sandy beaches and delicious cuisine, hides a secret beneath its surface. While most tourists are drawn to the sun and the sea, few know about the subterranean world rumored to exist there. For hundreds of years, there have been whispers about a secret underground city in Malta. It's never been found, but it's supposedly on the island somewhere. It was allegedly built by an order of knights who came on the scene around the same time as the Knights Templar, but lasted a lot longer. They are called the Knights Hospitallers, or if you want to use their long name, call them the Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem. They are a Catholic military order. Notice I said they are instead of was. It was on purpose. The Order of Knights was founded in Jerusalem in the 12th century and are still around today, yet few people know they even exist. The Knights have had headquarters in places like Cyprus, on the island of Rhodes, Malta, and even in St. Petersburg, Russia. These days, their strongest allegiance is with the Pope. Their patron saint is John the Baptist. So let's focus on their time in Malta, which lasted from the 16th century until Napoleon Bonaparte showed up at the end of the 18th century. While they occupied the island, the Knights supposedly carved a network of tunnels underneath it, forming a secret underground city. This is where history mingles with legend to make things confusing. The Knights Hospitallers did dig tunnels, but not very dramatic ones. They created a complex drainage system, which was considered highly advanced for its age. It provided unparalleled sanitation for the whole city of Valletta, but no one took care of it. When the British arrived on the island, the Knights' drainage system had become so neglected that it was a major source of pollution. Many believe the 1813 plague was the result of the drainage tunnels being neglected and spreading disease, killing around 8,000 people. The Knights also built a series of underground water reservoirs, which helped them fight back the Ottomans when they laid siege to Malta in 1565. As for the hidden city, the proof is vague at best. There have been weird tunnels found and channels that seem to lead nowhere. There have even been passages found that go on and on with no end in sight. Until every last tunnel and chamber beneath Malta is explored, scientists will never know what kinds of secrets the Knights Hospitallers left down in the dark corridors. And now for a quick break because it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Clinton Floyd and Different Sage for supporting this channel. We wouldn't be here without you guys. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The dungeon dwellers of the Caucasus. In the 16th century, people living in the Caucasus spoke of creatures that emerged from the bowels of the earth. They were sort of like halflings, but less pleasant to look at. These subterranean creatures were human-like in appearance, but clearly of a different species. They were short, didn't wear clothes, and covered themselves in mud. According to the legends, these underground beings spoke their own bizarre language, which sounded like monkeys hooting. When they emerged from their underground tunnels, they would occasionally come into contact with ordinary people. The people would give them some milk and send them on their way. Eventually, they would wander back into their underground dungeons. It isn't the only strange myth from Caucasus. People have been telling stories about giants and dwarves living in the mountains for thousands of years. The giants were supposedly destroyed over the course of many wars, but the small, misshapen dwarves survived. To avoid the humans, the dwarves took shelter in subterranean hideaways. These hideaways are still tucked in the remotest corners of the Caucasus. In World War II, when Germany invaded Russia, they supposedly found many of these strange cavities. So, what did the Nazis do? They blew up the tunnels in an attempt to reach their depths. But in the process, they only ended up collapsing many of the tunnels and sealing them for good. In the 1990s, researcher Artur Zemukov began investigating the curious subterranean structures throughout the region. He found that on almost every mountain he visited, there were bizarre rock formations that looked like vertical mines leading deep underground. One spot that was very interesting was in the North Caucasus of Russia, in the Kabardino-Balkaria Republic. In 2011, Artur found vertical passages, mines, chambers, and shafts that all appeared to have been carved with expert precision. Some of the shafts descend vertically into the mountain about 130 feet before opening into wide underground halls. The walls are smooth and perfectly polished, as if constructed using modern tools. But it isn't just that the walls are smooth that sets off alarm bells. These shafts and halls are made from megalithic blocks too big to make sense. It's believed these empty tunnels and deep structures were home to the strange creatures that appeared in the 16th century. But who built them? How extensive were these underground cities thousands of years ago? And why aren't more people curious about the underground world of Russia's legendary dwarves? The tunnels to the sun. In 2005, a bombshell discovery was announced that shocked scientists around the world. Dr. Samir Osmanagic claimed to have found what are now known as the Bosnian pyramids. They are potentially the biggest pyramids in the world. What many people forget is that Osmanagic also found tunnels underneath the European pyramids. The network of ancient passageways in Bosnia could be the oldest, biggest, and most complex labyrinth ever designed. Osmanagic supposedly found 5 pyramids 20 years ago. It's important to note that mainstream scientists claim that none of these are actually pyramids. The pyramids are just hills. The Pyramid of the Sun is just Visosika Hill, a natural formation that happens to look a little like a triangle. Osmanagic's claims have been overwhelmingly disparaged by other scientists. But let's focus today strictly on the supposed tunnels underneath the controversial pyramids. The one Dr. Osmanagic found in 2005 is known as the Ravni Tunnel. He discovered it about 2 miles from the Pyramid of the Sun. The tunnel is real. People had come across its entrance before, but assumed it was an old, crumbling cave. It was a safe assumption to make because the entrance does look like a dirty hole in the side of the hill. It was also filled with loose material that looked like dirt. Over the last 20 years, the tunnel has gradually been cleared. Experts don't believe the tunnel was made by any natural process. Somebody carved it out by hand a very long time ago. It must have taken an astounding amount of work. As experts continued to clear away the debris, they kept finding more and more offshoots, other tunnels jutting off in different directions. But the tunnels are all full of an insane amount of dust and dirt. Someone filled them in on purpose. Most of these side tunnels were brick closed with walls of rock. Somebody, maybe a lot of somebodies, filled the side tunnels and then sealed their entrances with thick walls of stone to prevent anyone from getting inside. This could all be a coincidence, but it seems unlikely. Check out these images. Do these not look like real walls? Behind those walls of rock are tunnels, leading to, well, no one knows how deep they go. However, they were clearly filled on purpose to prevent people from ever exploring them, and they twist and turn underneath what some say is the biggest pyramid in the world, a pyramid that mainstream science says is nothing but a mound of dirt. The Jungle Cave of Horrors. This secret in the Andes Mountains is so important to the history of humanity that in 1976, Neil Armstrong went looking for it. Neil Armstrong, as in the first man to walk on the moon. Before getting to the mysteries of the origin of humanity, I need to tell you about this cave. It's called Cave of the thos, and it is deep in the jungle, not far from the banks of the restless Coangos River. It's the kind of place that most people don't stumble upon by accident. When I say it's deep in the jungle, I mean it is deep in the jungle. The cave is only accessible through a vertical pit. Locals had known about it for centuries, but they never messed around with it because why bother? Who wants to rappel into a vertical void that goes 210 feet down into utter blackness? I will say that the local shore natives do descend into the cave once every spring using vine ladders, but only to collect fledgling birds and eat them. They don't climb down to the caves and chambers that stretch down much further at 1,000 feet below at the cave's lowest point. I should also mention that as of 2023, Cueva de los Tallos was officially the longest cave in Ecuador. The reason Neil Armstrong went on an expedition to the cave can be traced back to a Hungarian explorer named János Juan Moritz. He was extremely interested in a group that I've talked about before on the channel. They were called the Tula Society. The Tula Society has connections to Nazi Germany and the pseudo-scientific branch of the Nazi government known as the Ahnenerbe. These groups were interested in the occult, mythical legends, human origins, and mysticism. Anything weird you can think of, and anything paranormal or extraterrestrial, the Tula Society and the Ahnenerbe were involved in all of it. Janos was a firm believer in the theory that the Magyars, or ethnic Hungarians, had also settled in South America. It's a theory that the Ahnenerbe and the Tula Society may have supported. However, most scientists have dismissed and refuted it. Not many people believe in it these days, but in the 1960s, Janos did. He thought that his ancient ancestors had traveled from Eastern Europe to South America, but they didn't do it in one shot. The Magyars sailed across the Pacific, landed on the lost continent of Lemuria, and then continued to South America, where they settled in Ecuador. Remember though, this is just a theory. Lemuria has never been proven as a real lost continent. For more info on Lemuria, be sure to check out other videos from the channel. I've gone into it quite a bit. Janos explored Thos Cave in the 1960s and supposedly discovered the cultural birthplace of humanity. He found what is known today as the Golden Library, the last surviving remnant of the ancient Magyar. He supposedly found it inside one of the caverns within the cave. There was a stone desk covered in books made of gold. He described the books as being engraved with hieroglyphics, which he later determined to be written in the Phoenician language. As if that wasn't difficult enough to believe, Janos also claimed that he was contacted by extraterrestrials, telepathically no less. As Janos stood in the cave, aliens spoke to him inside his head. They congratulated him on his tenacity for getting into the cavern and promised to reveal the secrets of the universe. Let's take a quick look at the discovery of a prison underneath a Mesopotamian river. Then I'm going to reveal the crazy connections between Janos, the Golden Library, Neil Armstrong, and the Mormons. See, it's all connected. The Lost Mormon Cave. Is there really a cave where Joseph Smith found the legendary set of golden plates that became a sacred text for Mormons? These plates were said to contain a history of the ancient inhabitants of the Americas and the gospel of Jesus Christ. Apparently, the cave may have recently been discovered in Manchester, New York. It's a very strange story, so let's check it out. The best place to start is with the Book of Mormon. In Joseph Smith's book, it mentions a place called Cumorah. It's a hill where the prophet Mormon deposited several metal plates containing the record of the Nephites. This was just before the Nephites went to war against the Lamanites, resulting in about 230,000 deaths. You might be a little lost, so let me try to break it down as best as I can. According to Mormonism, the Nephites were an ancient group that settled in North America a very long time ago. Mormons don't believe that North America was home to only Native Americans. They believe that a group from Israel settled North America 2,600 years ago. If there are any Mormons watching this video, please feel free to clarify anything in the comments below. Mormons claim that a man named Nephi left Jerusalem at the behest of God in the year 600 BC. He took his family across the ocean and arrived in the Americas in approximately 589 BC. At first, the Nephites were a righteous group of people united under God, but as they spent more time in North America, they became less righteous. Soon, they were downright corrupt. In 385 AD, they were destroyed at the end of a long and brutal war with the Lamanites. There is one thing to keep in mind, though, and that one thing is that according to scientists and archaeologists, the Nephites never existed. Alright, so now that you know a little bit more about the Book of Mormon, we can talk about the Hill of Cumorah. It was in this hill where the full history of the Nephites was deposited by the prophet Mormon, sort of like how the Dead Sea Scrolls were stashed in caves. In the official account of Joseph Smith, it was in Manchester, New York that he encountered the angel Moroni, who led him to Cumorah and to the secret history of the Nephites buried within. Today, Cumorah is located in Palmyra, New York. It is a real hill guarded by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. On the top of the hill is a massive statue of Moroni the angel. There is more than one important hill in Mormonism. Another one may have been found in 2015 by amateur treasure hunters Greg Pavone and Casey Kern. They uncovered the entrance to a cave in Miners Hill, Manchester, New York. It's not that far from Cumorah. It's believed the cave found by the two young treasure seekers may have originally been dug by Joseph Smith in the 1820s. It may have been one of the places where Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon. Greg and Casey documented every step of their excavation. They dug into the hill with an excavator, ripped out stumps, and found metal artifacts, door hinges, a chain, and a padlock. As they continued to dig, they broke into an enormous hole, a void in the side of the hill. Miner's Hill is like an igloo, hollow on the inside. There is indeed a cave inside Miner's Hill, but no one knows if it was really used by Joseph Smith. Everything surrounding Joseph, Mormonism, and the Nephites is shrouded in secrecy. If anyone wants to elaborate in the comments, please go ahead. The ancient tunnels to nowhere. If you discovered a tunnel, would you be brave enough to explore it? In the quiet countryside of Cornwall, more than a dozen random tunnels have been found, many dating back 2,400 years. The most baffling thing about these tunnels is that nobody knows what they were used for. The underground passages are hidden underneath the lush green hills of the English countryside, hills that are populated by cows and small villages that don't even have a post office. The hills are also covered in mostly imperceptible bumps and rocks that date to prehistory. The landscape here is littered in forgotten ramparts, crumbling stone circles, and the entrances to tunnels. The tunnels in Cornwall shouldn't be confused with the souterrains discovered in places like Scotland, Ireland, and France. I've talked about souterrains before and how they could be part of a vast underground network used to move across Europe thousands of years ago. The Cornwall tunnels are different. Locals call them fugus. It comes from the Cornish word ogo, which means cave. Fugus are unique because they haven't been found anywhere else in England. These tunnels weren't simply dug by hand, they were built using sophisticated techniques. I think you'll be considerably shocked when I start showing you pictures of them. Each tunnel was built almost like a trench. A humongous ditch was carved into the ground, and then that ditch was lined with stones. The builders took great care in making sure that their tunnels weren't going to collapse. That's the kind of forethought that you need when you're a tunnel builder. The tunnels were even topped off with capstones. They had stone walls to prevent the dirt from filling the passages. Then they had ceilings installed. The ceilings were covered in dirt to make the tunnels invisible from above. This picture, thanks to Amanda Ruggieri, was taken in the entrance of one of the tunnels. The man you see standing in the gateway of the tunnel is archaeologist James Gossip. The tunnel is known as the Halike Fugu, and as you can see, it is huge. The ceiling is nearly 10 feet tall. You could have a party in here and the neighbors would have no idea. But there's something missing. The tunnel slowly narrows, gets a little more claustrophobic, and then suddenly this happens. Look at this picture of the other side, thanks to Alan Wrigley. The tunnel ends at the entrance to a significantly smaller tunnel that no human could walk through. It's a tight squeeze. You could crawl through it, but only if you were really small. It looks like a perfectly sized tunnel for a mythical dwarf. I don't even think a hobbit could fit through that doorway. So what could this tunnel have been used for? First, there is a large passage big enough for an extra tall basketball player. Then it stops and there is a secondary passage only big enough for an elf. There is also a medium-sized tunnel that branches off to the left and runs for 3 times the length of the first chamber, but it ends abruptly for no reason. Seeing as only about a dozen of them have been found, it's safe to say there are way more fugus hidden underneath the Cornish hills that have been lost forever. Archaeologists so far have failed to solve the mystery. If you think you might know what was happening in Cornwall in 400 BC, please let me know in the comments. I can't help but feel that these tunnels are hiding secrets that could change history. The Cave of Zeus. Unlike most of the places I've mentioned today, this next place isn't dark or creepy. It's surprisingly beautiful. Near the coastal town of Güzelkamli in Turkey lies the Cave of Zeus. It's the legendary hiding place of the king of the gods. The cavern is gorgeous no matter what time of year you visit. The water is a really bright blue that almost seems unnatural. The cave's entrance is blocked by stands of olive trees and wildflowers. The actual cave is down an old stone pathway which descends 50 feet around some cliffs to a cold pool of seawater mixed with fresh water that runs down from the mountains. But this isn't the Travel Channel. I'm here to talk about mysteries. The Cave of Zeus was supposedly the place where Zeus took refuge when he angered his brother Poseidon. Poseidon was the god of the sea. Whenever Poseidon got angry with Zeus, he would spark a tempest of hurricane force winds. Zeus would slip down into this Eden-like underground chamber to escape his brother's wrath. Zeus also supposedly hid in the tranquil cave whenever he needed to hide from his wife Hera, queen of the gods. Zeus would even get the village girls to join him for some evening swims in the moonlight. Zeus was pretty naughty. The caves below Egypt. What if the greatest secrets of the ancient Egyptians aren't found on the surface, but deep beneath the sands? There might just be a cave complex hiding underneath the pyramids of Giza. According to one British explorer, the real mystery is below ground. Andrew Collins wrote a book on the subject literally titled Beneath the Pyramids, which he published in 2009. Andrew tracked down the long-lost entrance to the hidden place under Giza by looking through the forgotten memoirs of Henry Salt. Don't worry, I'm not expecting you to know any of these guys. Henry Salt was a diplomat from the 19th century who visited Giza in 1817. In his memoirs, he wrote that he investigated an underground series of catacombs alongside Italian explorer Giovanni Caviglia. The document claims that the two explored the caves, found a handful of large chambers, but became daunted when the passageways kept on going, seemingly forever. Since this was 1817, there weren't any archaeologists to call. The explorers wrote down what they saw and left. When Andrew came across the memoirs, he was shocked. Amazingly, he retraced the old explorer's steps and indeed found something unbelievable. He found a crack in the back of a tomb west of the main pyramids that led into a natural cave. The cave was filled with bats and spiders, but sadly no mummies. Andrew said there are likely hundreds of similar caves underneath Giza. There's a whole world in need of discovering. As of early 2024, there have been no confirmed reports of significant new voids or caves discovered underneath the Giza complex. However, the Giza Plateau remains a hotbed for archaeological exploration, and new findings are always possible. Archaeologists continue to use advanced technologies like ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging to explore the site and uncover its secrets. The Jungle Cave of Horrors, Part 2. Remember Janos? Janos Juan Moritz explored an Ecuadorian cave and supposedly found proof that his European ancestors arrived in South America thousands of years ago. Remember how I told you earlier that the Mormons believe a group from Jerusalem did the same thing? The Nephites and Mormon myth are just like the Magyar and Janos' theory. Both ideas belong to the same search that has been happening for decades. No, for centuries. People like the Mormons, and perhaps the Nazis as well, have been trying to find proof of a long-lost white race in the Americas. When a group of Mormons learned about what Janos had allegedly found in Ecuador, they were shocked. The Mormons believed the metal plates Janos found in the Golden Library were the same golden plates that Joseph Smith found in the 1800s in Cumorah. The plates Joseph Smith found detailed the complex history of the Nephites. The Mormons believed Janos' tablets were the same, but detailing the history of another white race that arrived in the Americas. The Mormons reached out to Janos, hoping they could find some common ground. But although Janos offered his help, it was a disaster. Janos never led the Mormons to the Golden Library. One of the members of the expedition team, Avril Jesperson, said Janos didn't know what he was doing. It seemed like he had never even been to the area before. It became clear to the Mormons that Janos was lying, so they forgot about the whole thing. But the story wasn't over yet. Controversial theorist Eric von Daniken wrote about the expedition in his book, The Gold of the Gods, that he published in 1973. In the book, Eric claimed Janos had discovered evidence of a lost civilization with help from extraterrestrials. The Golden Library was hidden inside an artificial tunnel. Daniken's book was what inspired the 1976 expedition organized by Stan Hall of Scotland. It was one of the most expensive cave explorations in human history. The Ecuadorian military was involved, there was a film crew, more than 100 people went on the expedition, including Neil Armstrong. What do you think they found? Unfortunately, there was no Golden Library. But there were some really curious features inside the cave system. Researchers found passageways that had been cut and polished a little too perfectly for prehistoric cave dwellers. The tunnels looked more like something you'd expect to find in Area 51 or some other government facility in a hollow mountain, not the jungle. The team also found a burial site deep inside the cave from 1500 BC. There is irrefutable evidence that humans were doing something down in those dark tunnels as recently as 3,500 years ago, maybe thousands of years earlier. Last but not least were the square-shaped rock cuttings in the deepest parts of the cave. These things just take the cake. They're really impressive. Team members discovered structures carved from rocks that looked like elongated doors. The issue is that the doors didn't lead anywhere. They were just random empty doorways looking like deactivated portals, like stargates tall enough to accommodate giants. Janos's golden library was never discovered, and the real history of Cueva de los Tallos remains unsolved to this day. It's apparent that something strange was going on in this dark underground world. But what? Any guesses? Let me know in the comments below.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Assyrian artifacts in abandoned tunnels. When extremists from the Islamic State terrorist group began taking over territories in Iraq and Syria, they set to work actively destroying ancient sites and artifacts. They went on a rampage and proudly posted videos of their destructive acts on social media. In a strange turn of events, however, they accidentally uncovered a treasure trove of Assyrian artifacts while digging tunnels beneath the streets of Mosul, and for whatever reason, they left the items untouched. Faleh al-Shumari, head of the Antiquities Authority on Mosul, said that Iraqi government officials already knew about the objects beneath the shrine of Nabi Yunus, which was the prophet Jonah, which date back to the 8th century BC. The site is also home to a palace belonging to a Neo-Assyrian king, dating back to the 7th century BC. Archaeologists had gone to excavate on several occasions, but tried to keep their actions hush-hush in the 90s, and then in 2004 and 2005, since funding dried up and there was nowhere safe to put them. So they covered everything back up. The goal was to go back and excavate everything when it was safe to move it to a secure location. Iraqi soldiers then went down into the tunnels and rediscovered the artifacts. Among other things, there were 2 sculptures of the winged bulls of Nineveh and other sculptures of women and walls covered with cuneiform inscriptions. Countless historically valuable artifacts have been found in Iraq, which is considered one of the cradles of civilization. Many Iraqis are proud of the country's rich history and are still trying to recover many artifacts that have been lost or stolen. The Ninja Lantern Shark. With this cool name, the Ninja Lantern Shark does not disappoint. With a jet black color and bulging pale eyes, this deep-sea dweller looks as though it's rocking a Halloween costume. They have a menacing look about them, like they're about to jump out of the shadows, and they're kind of small so they can move a lot faster. In fact, they are only about 18 inches long. These sharks can be vicious and rip into their prey with the ferocity of their larger cousins featured in Jaws. Thankfully, it's rare for them to come into contact with humans. In fact, you wouldn't have to worry about finding yourself face to face with one of these guys anytime soon. And that's because these ninjas don't typically spend time in the shallow end. They usually live about 1,000 feet below the surface, so they are not the typical creatures that scuba divers would find. Found in the deep waters off the coast of Central America, these sharks get their name because of their glowing organs, called photophores. They tend to balance out the habitat they live in, which is usually pitch black, enabling them to move around and sneak up on prey. And while there are other lantern sharks that light up from the inside, these guys are the only ones with a darker skin to camouflage. Atomic scale wires. During a study that involved examining the properties of silver on an atomic scale, researchers from Australia, China, and Japan accidentally developed a wire just 1 atom wide. As part of the experiment, the team put nanoparticles of silver on the outside of tiny rods with channels inside and tested them in regular air instead of a vacuum as they normally would. Queensland University of Technology professor Dimitri Goldberg explained that when we do this in a vacuum or in some inert atmosphere, nothing happens, but they did it in air. So the atoms from silver particles diffused very fast, and they diffused inside the channels. The team expected the silver to react with the air and form silver oxide, but instead the atoms self-organized within the channels, forming 200 atom-thin wires, each one about 1/5 as thick as a human hair. They definitely weren't trying to do this on purpose. The accidental creation opens the doorway for the development of atomic-scale wires, something scientists have been trying to achieve for over 20 years. Additional research shows that the silver nanowires could possibly be used as thermal switches. At a certain temperature, the material became an insulator. This is not common for silver. The next goal is to make the wires even smaller. New natural blue. New colors are actually hard to come by, and natural new colors are crazy rare. The color blue rarely occurs in nature, making naturally occurring blue pigments really difficult to find. In fact, many seemingly blue colors are actually combinations of reds and purples rather than true blue. But a newly discovered cyan blue variation could potentially be used as an alternative to synthetic brilliant blue food dye. Detected by chemists as part of a collaborative project between the University of California, Davis and Mars Wrigley, the color is sourced from red cabbage, which contains water-soluble pigments called anthocyanins. Only a small amount of the vegetable's anthocyanins are blue, prompting the researchers to use specially designed enzymes to turn some of the other anthocyanins into the desired shade. They designed the enzyme with the help of a powerful computer, which sorted through trillions of potential protein sequences to come up with an efficient combination. The resulting cyan blue pigment is reportedly nearly identical to the industry's go-to synthetic dye, known as Brilliant Blue FCF, or E133. Artificial blues have proven problematic, often posing environmental or durability issues. Some, like cobalt blue, even turned out to be toxic, and Prussian blue released cyanide. The new pigment comes not long after scientists at Oregon University accidentally discovered yin min blue, a so-called near-perfect blue pigment, in 2009. It was the first such discovery in 200 years, and came while the researchers were observing the electrical properties of heated manganese oxide, a project that had nothing to do with looking for a pigment. Lost Golden City. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities has just announced the discovery of the ruins of what archaeologists call the Lost Golden City of Luxor. Dating back more than 3,000 years, the ancient metropolis was found buried in sand last September. It's the largest ancient Egyptian city ever uncovered, according to archaeologist Zahi Hawass, who led the team that unexpectedly made the discovery while searching for Tutankhamun's mortuary temple. During the dig, the team was surprised to encounter zigzagging mud walls measuring as much as 10 feet tall. Without meaning to, they had found a city that other archaeologists had tried and failed to find. In a statement, archaeologist Betsy Bryan described the site as the most important discovery in Egypt since King Tut's tomb was found in 1922. Speaking with NBC, Hawass said that the Golden City will help researchers better understand life during ancient Egypt's Golden Age. So far, the team has unearthed rings, scarabs, colored pottery, tools, and other artifacts dating back between 1391 and 1353 BC, during the reign of Amenhotep III. The site contains storage houses, grinding stones, and areas for meat production, offering an unprecedented look at everyday life in an industrial Egyptian city. Oddly, the archaeologists found a skeleton with its arms outstretched and a rope around the knees. They have yet to come up with an explanation for the odd burial and have several other lingering questions that they hope to answer through further excavations at the site. Firefly sound signals. While wandering around a tropical rainforest with microphones, gathering data for a study on bats' echolocation, a team unexpectedly detected similar high-frequency sounds coming from fireflies. Bats and fireflies have something in common. Led by Tel Aviv University professor Yossi Yovel, the accidental discovery took the whole study in a new direction. They examined 3 different firefly species that are common in Vietnam and one from Israel. Using high-speed video, they found that the fireflies produce the sound by moving their wings, but the fireflies themselves can't hear this frequency. That doesn't make any sense. But bats eat fireflies, so this sound that the fireflies are making is an evolved warning signal against bats. This ability may serve as additional protection in cases where the firefly's glow fails to deter bats because they can't see very well. its musical armor. Warning signals that the sender itself cannot detect is well documented for plants, but in animals this is quite rare. The musical battle between bats and fireflies continues. Turtle fossil in church. While searching through the ruins of a church that was destroyed by an earthquake in Christchurch, New Zealand, sculptor Paul Deans happened upon a 35-million-year-old turtle fossil embedded in the core of a limestone pillar. Built between 1881 and 82, the Oxford Terrace Baptist Church sustained extensive damage in the 2011 Canterbury earthquakes. When it was demolished, its pillars were hollowed out for the construction of a new church that opened in 2017. Deans received several pieces of the pillar's cores last year to use in his work, leading him to the rather unexpected discovery. Dr. Paul Schofield, Senior Curator of Natural History at the Canterbury Museum, noticed that the unnamed ancient turtle species resembles another turtle fossil that a builder found while quarrying limestone in Oamaru in 1880. He concluded that both fossils were likely extracted from the same quarry and may contain parts of the same animal. That would be a coincidence. Schofield said that turtle fossils are really rare in New Zealand. No similar turtle fossils have been found in Oamaru in more than 150 years of quarrying there. It's amazing that this new fossil was sitting inside a pillar for 130 years. It could have been lost forever. Scientists will study the newly discovered piece and will examine microfossils surrounding the turtle to determine if the two fossils are from the same animal, as they suspect. That would be quite the find. Schofield speculates that the prehistoric species was a sea turtle similar in size to the modern-day leatherback turtle, which grows up to 7.2 feet long. It lived during the Oligocene period, which lasted from 65.5 million to 23 million years ago, when New Zealand was covered in shallow seawater. Hidden frescoes. A few years ago, Tufts University professor Christina Maranci discovered hidden centuries-old artwork at the Mren Cathedral, a historic church in western Armenia. While hiding from local police inside the church during her investigation of off-limits archaeological sites, she suspected that there was something beneath the plaster on the walls. Maranci snapped photos with her camera and used Photoshop to enhance the obscured features, visually restoring parts of the hidden frescoes and inscriptions that are invisible to the naked eye, including an ox in the church's apse. She believes the image is an early 11th century depiction of the biblical figure Ezekiel with an ox, lion, man, and angel, the symbols of the four evangelists Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But Maranci also admitted that her speculation is inconclusive for now, and that more investigating needs to be done to confirm the fresco's age and meaning. The keen-eyed researcher said she was not particularly interested in frescoes when she made the discovery, but that the finding prompted her to start investigating other old churches for similar historical features. And while she credits imaging software that anyone could use for drawing out the concealed artwork, Maranci noticed the importance of someone having knowledge of what they are looking for. She continues to investigate her findings and hopes to overcome several obstacles surrounding the discovery, including a lack of experts and governmental red tape that prevents researchers from legally exploring valuable historical sites in the region. She wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. Medieval tunnel. Earlier this year, electrical workers discovered a mysterious network of medieval tunnels beneath a 12th century abbey in Wales. They were digging a hole for a new power line pole in a customer's backyard. Situated along a brook, the tunnel system is just 4 feet tall, and there is no record of it being built. Archaeologists who investigated the site do not know what the tunnels were used for or how extensive the network is. They were a complete secret. It does not appear on any maps created by the UK's mapping agency, which dates back to the 18th century, so the power company had full permission to dig at an archaeological site because nobody knew that it existed. They got quite the surprise. It's possible that the tunnels are connected to nearby Tintern Abbey, a national icon of Wales that was built in 1131. The abbey fell into ruin after King Henry VIII's dissolution of the monasteries in the 16th century, which would explain the tunnel's absence in historical records. Alan Gore, a technician who participated in the discovery, said that he has been involved in other excavations where they have discovered old wells and cellars not shown on any plans, but nothing as exciting and impressive as this. The electrical work was rerouted, and archaeologists plan to thoroughly excavate the secret tunnels in hopes of uncovering their secrets. Ancient fish. While studying sediment cores collected from Norwegian coastal lakes, a group of geologists found the remarkably well-preserved bones of an ancient three-spine stickleback fish. After the ice sheets melted at the end of the last ice age, coastlines throughout the northern hemisphere experienced an uplift, creating inland lakes that effectively cut the species off from the ocean. The recently discovered fish lived in brackish waters around 12,000 years ago, a time when the lake it was found in was nearly, but not completely, disconnected from the sea. A new study reveals that stickleback populations in separate places evolved to survive in their new freshwater environments, experiencing similar changes in their behavior, function, and appearance, a phenomenon known as parallel evolution. Scientists typically rely on modern-day freshwater and marine species as models for learning about parallel evolution. The rare opportunity to study these types of changes in ancient species eliminates some of the guesswork that comes with differentiating modern evolutionary traits from those experienced by ancestral populations. For the study, scientists extracted DNA from 2 prehistoric stickleback fish and compared the results against modern specimens. A researcher explained that although these bones belong to sticklebacks that died thousands of years ago, when most of Scandinavia was still covered by a giant ice sheet, they still contain fragments of DNA. These genetic sequences provide us with a window into the past and to the early stages of when fish began to adapt to fresh water. In this case, the stickleback fish already contained genetic variants that made them adaptive to fresh water. These findings are helping experts to better learn the ways evolution occurs over thousands or even tens of thousands of years, helping to fill in the gaps in evolutionary timelines. Thanks for watching! Which discovery was your favorite? What do you want to learn more about? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. See you later! Bye!